Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigre Gardenia. I uh um see, lost for words. One of those super enthusiastic conversations that I just can't wait for you to hear and to share this with you. So, Penelope Mavor is somebody that I spoke with a long time ago. That's how I don't even remember how I met her. I think I met her online. I really loved what she was doing. I wanted to get to know what she was up to, especially with her whole Earth Converse, which is the name of her business and her work, and it's all about this conversation with the earth. And so she and I had a conversation not that long ago and decided that I just had to bring her on the podcast. I had to have you here. And we were all set to have a conversation about how this process that she goes through, this understanding of being intimately expansive with the land in which she lives in and such. And now that we got into this conversation, we we touched on something else, which I think is what I love about doing this podcast. What I love about bringing to you all these conversations with these amazing individuals is the fact that we can, there's so much to talk about. Let's say it that way. There's so much out there. There's so much amazingness that we can be sharing with each other, that when we have these conversations and let the conversation organically, naturally unfold, what comes out is pure magic. So I cannot wait for you to listen to this amazing conversation with Penelope Mavor. This is episode 105, Solo Together. Welcome to Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigria Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and the founder of the Naturally Conscious community. For over a decade, I've been known as a world ambassador for plant advocacy, working closely with plants to share their practical wisdom to help you consciously embody the elements of life that nourish your evolution. In this podcast, I delve into ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways of plants. Together, we'll explore how ecosystem thinking helps you overcome limiting beliefs, understand the true nature of relationships, and live an authentic, impactful life. Oh, Penelope, I'm actually extremely excited about this conversation because, you and I have talked a few times. We have very similar paths and yet completely different paths. And I love that. And I'm really excited about having the audience hear somebody who's doing similar work, but from a completely different angle. And I think that this just shows us kind of the richness of nature in and of itself. So before we dive into all the things that you're up to, tell the audience, who is Penelope?
I am just so delighted to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. And I have got goosebumps about being here. And so Penelope, so I am a Kiwi kid, a New Zealander who living in Spain. And I guess it's sort of like it's interesting from I'm from an island to an island. I'm an island girl. I have all these um sort of like characteristics that are quite defining in terms of who I am. Like I'm an Aries, I'm a middle child, I'm a all those sort of cliches. I'm a seeker. I'm a person who has followed my path, my heart, and I say that because I grew up in a little community in New Zealand. And I observed around me about the dynamics. It came from a farming agricultural place. And I got curious about the impact of what farmers and the dynamic of the economy, the social situation. And it sounds sort of like, like sort of grandiose that I thought about that as a young child. But it was really interesting for me. And then I studied sustainability, and then sustainability, I went into leadership. And so I've sort of followed my heart and my interest in that. And at a certain point, how you do your own journey of you do your professional journey, and it's intertwined with your personal. So I am a seeker, and I was sort of seeking answers, and I was interested in my own potential. And so I became, from a sustainability, I realized also that it was about the leadership. Like leadership, the leaders had to talk to each other. Sustainability is not an intellectual exercise. Leadership is not an intellectual exercise. It has to be felt and seen and embodied. And so I felt that myself, that I had to, like, if I wanted to be mindful, if I wanted to be present with the world, um, I had to be, I had to get on the cushion. I had to be practice that meditation, and it was a deep part of being in Italy, actually, and in Dharma Atala, if you know it. Yeah, that led me to then deepening my relationship with the actual earth, and then as it goes on, I've created my leadership offering related to this mindful, whole systems, sustainable coaching way. And that's what I do. I work with leaders around that. And
I
yeah.
love this. And I want to first and foremost touch on something you just said that I think we don't talk about enough, which is the fact that in many um, in many people's minds, the word sustainability is based on a type of practice, right? I'm supposed to do these things and these are the boxes I'm supposed to check off and this makes something sustainable. But I like the way that you say it, which is, sustainability really is a completely different thing. I mean, in order to really create a sustainable society, a sustainable product, a sustainable world, it isn't a label you tack on to something else. It's a mindset. It's a practice almost. It's almost like a way of being that
Yes.
is, I embody sustainability not as a catchphrase, but more as something that I am. And therefore, by being it, the things I produce naturally come from that. And
Mm.
so I'd love to hear a little bit more of how sustainability kind of, if embodying that mindset, which it sounds like is the way that you look at it also, how did that take you into the idea that, oh, wait a minute, that means that leadership is kind of the same thing?
Yeah. Yeah, great. Because I do, like sustainability, that definition of social, economic, and environmental, like it's a whole systems perspective, isn't it? And
Right.
so, therefore, I think it is like, what are our, with our own wholeness? How do we integrate those parts of us? The wounded child, and or the wild adult, or the adapted adolescent. Like how do we do that? And so it became clear, like when you sit in so I would sit in sustainability meetings or partnership meetings, and you can see that disconnect, that people aren't speaking from their truth, and they are, it feels like sometimes some meetings we're just like little adolescents, we're just immature children, batting ideas or opinions, or no, actually not even opinions, and so you can get a feeling that actually what we have to do is focus on how do we lead ourselves sustainably.
That's it.
Yeah, and that, like you say, it's got to, like, it's quantum physics, isn't it? It's just sort of like that inner and outer relationship. It's got to manifest in a more healthy way. We turn up differently. We see the world differently, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the when I first started, one of the first programs that I put together was called the Naturally Conscious Leadership Group, which still is part of my inner circle of clients and students who are kind of the leaders of tomorrow. But I found that because I don't work in the corporate setting anymore, the word leadership, people were afraid of it. Like it's almost like they think it doesn't apply. And for me, the reason I had called it leadership was because it's about self-leadership, right? It's like being the naturally conscious leader to me is I lead my life. I lead the type of life that so it was lead as in like, yes, a leader, but also lead as in I am leading a life that is in that naturally conscious, sustained, regenerative, all those things. I embody it so much that by its own kind of nature, it spills out of me into the things I do and it guides the things that I'm doing. And that really close relationship with the land, with the beings of nature and everything helped me be that naturally conscious leader. Wow, it was so hard to explain. It still is to explain. Because everybody thinks that a leader is like the business person who's standing up there. I'm like, you can be a leader just, I don't know, like in your family. You can be a leader, when you're in the middle of a grocery store and, something, and the way that you do things shows that you're a leader. It's a personal way of being, not this title that only applies to certain people. So how do you find, do you find that you mainly work with, is it easier for a corporate world to then bring that into their lives, or even for the corporate people, are they still seeing it as two separate things?
Yes, I think it is two separate things. I had this conversation just the other day because I'm doing a spring reset, and a friend said to me, and she knows me well. She says, "But I'm not a leader." She absolutely is. But it was so interesting. It's such a loaded, misunderstood term, isn't it? And I think we probably do need a new term because, and particularly I see in Spain where people like, oh, they think of Franco, or Italy, it's Mussolini, or there's
Oh,
Trump, or
yes.
we hear the and so and I'm so used to it, like working 25 years with leaders. I love the word leader, for those reasons of self leadership. And I work with an organization called Impact International. And so they're a global outdoor experiential organization, and they have a lovely strapline. It was like, leadership is not a special type of person or a special type of role, it's a special type of action, one where it comes from noticing and deciding and the courage to act. And
Right.
so I think, in definitely, of course, the corporate world understands leadership more so, but it is interesting that we don't, and I think generally we don't, we give away our authority, we give away our agency, we give away our sovereignty. And I think that that's from our childhood, that we refer to the adult or the parent, we go to our teachers, we're constantly looked out for, for that great man theory or the great person that will save us. And, it's a daily act, what's it, James Hollis said something about like, to reclaim our sovereignty is a daily task upon the soul. And I
Yes.
believe that. And I thought, why wouldn't you be interested in that? Why wouldn't you be? With the corporate world, I don't know if you notice this. Like, notice now that leadership develop, development is a different thing. Like, so many people in the corporate world, they are outside their lives, they are doing ceremonies, they are part of your nature connection, they are doing qigong or yoga. In the past they didn't, but and it's interesting that then they don't bring in those practices and that self leadership into their wholeness, for their corporate world. They
Yeah.
hide, they hide part of themselves, and so therefore, those going back, it's not sustainable. The decisions they're making are not connected. They're not coming from an embodied, grounded place.
This is I mean, I'm so glad that you said that, because this is the thing that we're seeing across the board. I was, in multiple interviews that I've done even recently, and like these conversations that are coming out, is the fact that for certain generations of people, especially in some ways, like there's like a certain generation that still feels like they're not allowed to bring the principles that are changing their lives. They're the things that outside of the office environment, especially for those that still work in kind of more traditional or structured business models, they feel like these things that I'm doing that are helping me become a better person, I'm not allowed to consciously or maybe explicitly bring
Mm,
them into the work that I do, that you
yeah.
do. And I see this disconnect all the time, where their connection to plants. I was using the example with a previous guest. I was having this conversation about Natasha Myers' is research when she's a planthropologist, and
Mm,
when she was doing research into understanding how do plants how do scientists incorporate kind of the idea of plant communication at all, like do they
mm,
feel like the plants are actually communicating with them, and they found that the younger generation struggled to accept that, because they had to prove that they were scientists. They had to prove that they were
mm,
using measurable actions, and
mm,
like they were doing the things according to what was necessary to get results. Where older scientists, in particular those with tenure or in
mhm,
very, very established roles, could admit that, maybe what is I'm calling intuition is actually coming from the plants. Like maybe it is the plants
Mhm.
inspiring me to find my results. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. It's, the feel that you need to have this separate because I can't quantify it with a measurable number and statistic. I can't give you if I talk to plants, I'm more relaxed. And then that leads to cortisol levels that drop, that then leads to this. And I have to give you such a long thing to show it's okay for me to bring it into into the boardroom. And it's like, why? That just seems so silly. And it seems counterintuitive because then again, like you said, you give away your sovereignty. It's like, I give away my ability to be a leader in whatever role I'm in, even if I'm an individual contributor, because I have separated out all these parts of me that are the things that help bring a better, more holistic, more connected, more
Mhm.
healthier, probably, way of doing business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it incredible that
No,
we're still,
we're
you know,
still here.
we're still
We're
there.
still here. But I got excited. I don't know about the telepathy tapes. Have you
Yeah.
seen that?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh my goodness. And she talks about the materiality of science. And actually, I would have thought that, it was actually the older scientists would say would be more, material. And the younger people, yeah, there's much intuition, but it's interesting, But we're so well, it's our mind is decolonized, yeah, colonized in a way, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
so we have to, or we get very rigid. That's part of my interest with the plants about the teachers of rewilding myself,
Mhm.
and seeing it differently. And I think we have to challenge that, and I guess people there's something about people not feeling safe, isn't it? Like
It is so
yeah,
much.
it's so in their nervous system or not trusting that, or definitely in the corporate world. I can't talk about my yoga because I'll be ridiculed. Like it's something that people aren't sharing.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum going off to yoga like in the 1970s, and she never taught us. But I think she wanted to also keep it sacred. There was
Right.
something there. So there's all different reasons. But the more that we can bring in this wholeness, I mean, what a gift to the world. And isn't that interesting? I mean, it's like, I'm curious about my own potential and my own wholeness and what's possible out of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to understand that we are more than just this one analytical mind. I think we're only starting now to weave in the possibilities that our intuitive, more collective side brings a lot to the table. In other words, it allows me to be a better leader,
Yeah.
using that, going back to that word. The fact that leadership is not about being able to statistically dissect everything and then set a direction based on some arbitrary set of parameters that society has deemed useful. On the contrary, it is being able to read the room, understand the
Yes.
emotional landscape that others are experiencing. It's not about going to yoga because it makes me more stretchy and therefore it's better, but it's about I walk out of yoga and my mind is more clear and I can actually relax, and then I can see things, and I become softer in the way that I talk because I
Yes.
feel more comfortable and embodied. I feel safer
Yeah.
also to have like more expansive conversations. And I think, we're starting to see the acceptance of it from the yoga perspective. But I think it's funny that the nature connection,
Mm.
and here I want to get into more of the
Yeah.
stuff that you're doing right now. I feel like it's almost where yoga was at the time of your mother,
Yes.
where, yoga at the time of your mother
Yes.
was this like, she knew she was getting more than just a flexy
Yeah.
body, and it's moving, but it was, still from the perspective of the external world, especially, in our Western cultures, it was exercise. That's the reason I'm doing it.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
nature connection for so many people is kind of at that stage where it's like, I do it for exercise or I do it for this. And we
Yes.
do it a lot more like, oh, there's so much more you're getting out of it. Like, this
No,
is
really.
down.
Really. And so many like leaders will say, no, I go out to nature, and they'll actually go out, their holidays are nature based. And it's like, so where is that? So that we intuitively go out there, but the depth, and I mean, I shared, I can tell my story about my own mission around intimately expansive relationship with the world. Like it's, like how the invitation is there for us to pay attention and go deeper and to feel into that wholeness with nature. And it's, and people are very, can be very private, like, and even the shame of like hugging a tree, like,
Of not being able to explain why you're doing it. So much of it is that these
exactly.
people, I feel like leaders think that they're supposed to be able to explain everything. They're supposed to lead by
Yes.
telling you what to do. That's the old
Yes.
model, right?
Yeah.
Telling you what to do and being able to explain why you're doing it.
Mm.
And when you're hugging a tree or when you're out sitting and you're like, I'm getting answers to questions I didn't even know I was asking. Therefore, the answers still don't have words. But there's a part of me that knows that there's an answer in there now. How the hell do I explain that to my team?
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have
You
to.
don't have to. You don't have to.
I think that's probably why your mother didn't tell you about her yoga. She couldn't explain it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something you just have
Mm.
to do for to yourself.
Mm.
And I think that that's the struggle that we sometimes have in even filling our programs and our courses and our coaching, is because I feel like we still struggle with the fact of, how do I explain to you in a way something you're going to feel in your unique way that is
Mm.
going to change your life, but I
Mm.
can't put it into words yet because it's an experience that's much more about embodiment. How do you
Yeah.
do that?
Yes, and part of it is like, that's, and part of it is for them to find out what that feeling is. So therefore you can't tell. You
Mhm.
can't tell them, like it's impossible. And also, yeah, because it's, yeah, we'll find our way, and the right people turn up, with a
Right.
student, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
on that note, I find it very interesting that you
Mm.
called, your work Earth Converse, because it
Yes.
is about kind of not conversing necessarily in like, let me put words to it
Yes.
perfectly. So can you share
Yeah.
somewhat like what for you is that conversation, that conversing that's happening?
Oh, thank you. I did. It was, the name came from a conversation on the land. So I have learned the practice of walking with the land. My experience of deepening my own connection with myself and the earth. So I walked the land. It was like, what needs to come through me? What is it that I'm offering? And this earth converse came, and it was like, it felt really obvious. It was like, yeah, I'm learning to have a different relationship. And so it's like, we're life is constantly inviting us into a conversation with the breeze, or the even like going past a plant, like on my walk, and you just, and it brushes you, and it's like, there's the invitation,
Hmm.
there's the pause. And so I think, so I've just, like going back to that sustainability thing, that I can help leaders really feel into their own nature connection, their own embodiment, that help them with their own wholeness. So therefore they do make better decisions for people and planet. And so my earth conversing is like, how the unlimited ways that life is asking us to come into communion and conversation. So everyone has their own name for it, but I call it, like earth conversing. And so, yeah, like people go, I went to a tree and I didn't have it didn't say anything to me. And it's like, that's the thing. It's learning that the conversation comes in different ways. Those
Right.
feelings you're talking about, those sensations, those images, it talks. And so how can we learn to, yeah, communicate in a more intimate and expansive way?
And now I just want to take a very quick break. I want to share with you one of our eco-conscious business partners. Hey there. Did you know that regular toilet paper wipes out 27,000 trees a day? It's time to make a change. And so I want to introduce to you Who Gives a Crap? Ecological toilet paper that's as good for the planet as it is for your bum. Look, billions of people don't have access to a toilet, yet more people have a mobile phone than this basic necessity. That's why Who Gives a Crap donates 50% of their profits to support clean water and sanitation services in developing countries. So far, they've donated over $11 million to their charity partners, and they're available in Australia, the United States, in the United Kingdom and in many other places. Their toilet paper is available in 100% recycled and premium 100% bamboo options. By the way, the bamboo option is fantastic. My whole family uses it. Offering eco-friendly choices delivered right to your doorstep with free carbon neutral delivery. Plus, the rolls are extra long, so they last pretty much forever. Now, my family is one of those that my family goes through toilet paper like water, especially my mother. It's just this thing. But these rolls last so long that even she noticed the difference. So, are you ready to make the switch? I want you to click on the link in the show notes to order your first Who Gives a Crap toilet paper now. Trust me, once you try it out, you'll see why most people opt for a subscription where they get it regularly. So let's save trees and support a cleaner world, one roll at a time. And it takes time. It's one of those, it's a slow, I think if you savor it as a slow progression, as a slow journey, it can be so enriching because as you're learning how others communicate, the land, the beings of the land, from the smallest ant or to, the bird in the air and to the tree or the grass, each one has their own sort of way. And as I enter into that relationship with these different beings and I start to receive in whatever way that looked, I also recognize that I am receptor. I have so much more
Yes.
and more ways to understand. And like you said, that intimate, expansive experience expands me in ways that I then take into a meeting space. And I'll say it this way. I think there are still people, especially highly sensitive people, that feel worried that doing this type of work and bringing it into their office space is they're going to be too sensitive. In other words, it's going to all feel like a bombardment of the senses. But I don't know about for you, and I'm super curious as to what you see, but in my experience, in doing this with the safety of the land, with the beings of the land, with my natural expression, I actually find that the plants, all of these, other kin teach me attunement
Yes.
in a non-mental way that no healer, no human healer, no human describer could ever teach me. In other words, it's like because I have to attune in order to hear them, I have to play with my senses in order to hear the smallest vibration of an ant to, a big imposing tree to a windstorm that I have to like sit inside of and feel. I learn in a safe way, kind of like a child
Yes.
playing,
Yeah.
how to attune. And therefore, when I'm sitting in a boardroom, it makes it almost easier for me to like tune out this negative energy coming from this guy over here. And this girl that's really feeling frustrated, I can tune into her, but I can also like send her some softness. And this one over here, like I don't know. I feel like it actually makes it easier rather than making us more raw.
Yes.
Does that make
Yes.
sense?
No, so yes, it's a bodily yes.
Love it.
Because I think that, when we go out to the land, and I love this idea, where it's the pure source, isn't it? Like a human will always have their own judgments or doubt, there's of course wise folk out there, but I think that when we're in relationship with the plant, with the tree, with the bird, and we can do that, it is that there's a knowing, isn't it? I love this attunement. Our body relaxes and
Right.
we feel connected, don't we? We feel a sense of belonging. And if we can bring that into then our, day-to-day human interactions, and we can remember that, our body remembers that,
Right.
this is the experiential way, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
and so, and I just love the subtleties of that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how it doesn't have to go. And again, going back to one of the difficulties is that these aren't things that you teach by like, take these 4 steps.
Yeah.
That's not it.
Mm.
And it's a learning then from there. How do you do it anywhere? Like when
Mm.
sitting in a meeting in a conference room, and I'm like, I'm going to connect to that tree, that plant that has been sitting there in the corner. Help me attune to so and so who's yelling at me right now, and help me
Yes.
find I can find the right way through
Yes.
this. And I find
Yeah.
that expansion just sort of it sits with you.
Mm.
The episode, I think it was 98 of my podcast, was all about all the different ways I've up until that time that I
Yeah.
had been learning to connect and to receive messages from plants,
Mm.
and how much that has helped me better understand people. Because now, like you said, I feel a person with the whole body, but I don't just take in, their difficulties.
Mm.
I can sit with them and hold that space so much better, because there's so much of me that's more open, and much more of me that's also much more compassionate. Like
Mm.
I'm more in tune with myself. I'm comfortable with who I am. I could see you, match you where you are. I don't have to take on your stuff. Like I
Mhm.
think that expansion that
Mhm.
happens is so helps us so much in our day-to-day life. And
Mhm.
and it's a shame when we cut that off and we don't allow that to come into the other things that we do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then, the co-creation, like how we're co-creating. And I learned this sort of in with Vision Fast. So that's my background in terms of really understanding that life is a mirror, and this
Mhm.
deep, deep rites of passage, this deep way of being in ceremony with the land, and work from like Bill Plotkin and Soulcraft, and, just experiencing in that way. And,
Oh, no,
um,
give us more details. We wanna know what
uh,
that is. How does that work? How tell
uh,
me more, tell me more.
so just this so through meditation, and like being a plant, like have to be stationary and rooted, and
Right.
just stay and be in my wholeness. So learning about that, and then I got more nuance with actually life. So my going out to nature, and I'm an New Zealander, outdoors is really important to me. So but it became a more subtle relationship. I noticed more.
Mhm.
I was quieter. I didn't march through the landscape. I walked slowly, or I
Mhm.
sat, all these sorts of things. And then bit by bit, then like Bill Plotkin, he's Animus Valley. So he's from the ecotherapy,
Mhm.
beautiful writings. It was a bit of a when I had my podcast, Earth Converse podcast, about our conversations and relationships with the earth. He came on, and I was just like, oh, I'm done. It's wonderful. But just he calls it soul craft. So this is, how we are, the natural co-creation with life, and all the ways we can deepen our connection. And and then I went into like the School of Lost Borders. So they are a rites of passage organization in the America, and they come from, so like studied indigenous wisdom and ancient human practices, that doing what humans have always done, going out solo, typically fasting, for connection, inspiration, and belonging. So
Right.
I did some vision quests with them, and I also have done mirroring around that, like life is a mirror, nature's a mirror, nature's metaphor, and sat in ceremony. And so that's sort of that's where a lot of the earth conversing comes from. In fact, earth converse came out from a my first vision fast. So I learned about the co-creation. Like I remember on that vision fast, is that like I grabbed a cactus, um and well, it actually invited me to grab it, actually, because I was sort of like like
We
through
are
a
not violent
conversation.
with plants, only if they ask. Only if they ask.
Exactly. And I picked out, and I just like had these it was sort of like I picked out of all like the beliefs and all the things that were holding me back,
Oh, wow.
and so that sort of way of being with that plant, with that. And so how do we co-create? So I think that anything like that becomes interesting, or whether we're making an infusion, or foraging that I've learned about, just even that is like a co-creation with the wildness. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that this, the more I work in these, work with people, the more I have these types of conversations, the more I realize that everything is a co-creation.
Mm.
There is
Mm.
no such thing.
Yeah.
First of all, there is no such thing as an I anyway, because,
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
cells are only like 10% of my body. The rest of it is all microbes and everything else. So it's like, there is no such thing as I, as in, this it- piece. So everything is a co-creation, right? I'm co-creating with my own body, with the microbes in my body, with all the other
Mm.
entities that live with me. And then anything I do is really a co-creation. And I think if we were to step into that in everything we did, if we really leaned deeper into it, and not as a thing of reducing or taking away my sovereignty, but on the
Yeah.
contrary, about seeing my sovereignty more as an expression through that co-creation process.
Yes.
Oh, can you imagine just how
Yes.
much easier life would
Wow.
be? Like,
Wow.
it would give us back that opportunity to recognize that a sacrifice is not something negative like we've done, but on the contrary, it's this beautiful thing where I say, I am giving up this piece because I feel like this greater thing is so much more
Yes.
important. And therefore, it's easy for me to just let that other thing go in order to embody or be a part of this other thing. And I feel like that's another one of those elements that, working in that intimacy with myself as a being of
Mm.
nature, starts to become easier. It just flows from
Mm.
you.
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
how much nicer, like, can we be, I don't know, would life be if we were to sort of live in that embodied
Ah,
space?
yes. And what, like the ideas and the creativity coming from that? I
Yeah.
mean, incredible. I do. I call it solo together. Like, I really believe that is the human story. Like, how do I be my individual self in my earth suit, my ecological niche, and my gifts to the world, and in relationship? In relationship, like you say, with the microbes, or my partner, or that tree, or the world. And I think it also scales up. It's like Spain's relationship with Europe, or
Right,
Europe's
right.
relationship with the world, like solo together. Like, where's our sovereignty and where's our connection? And given that we are these, we're all one, but we also are in this little casing. So what is that? I mean, yeah, I get very excited about that. Mm.
That is super. I mean, I love that idea of solo together. I when I created the Reconnect with the Plant Kingdom, which was like the first big plant related course that I created, that's inside of the Naturally Conscious community. There is an entire module on independent, interrelated,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Because that's it.
Yes,
It's
that's
that
it.
principle. It's like no tree is ever. There's a beautiful article on. I reference it in that module, which is, I think it's an Aeon article, and it's beautifully
Mm.
written and talking about how, no, in this case they're using a tree as the example, but no tree is ever individual, and yet no tree is only, interrelated. It has to be
Yes.
both simultaneous. You could have
Yes.
two identical, biologically identical starting trees, like seeds planted in one,
Mm.
I don't know, a foot or, 3 feet, a meter away from one another, and the two trees that grow will be completely
Mm.
different, even though the
Yes.
entire DNA structure is, and all the structure that is the base is the same. Why? Because each one has slightly different wind, slightly different sunlight, nourished in a different way. They're passing things between each other. They're passing with different beings of the forest. Like, it's always interrelated and yet individual. And so that whole idea of
Mm.
solo together, I think, is,
Mm.
how different would it be if we grew up being told that you are always an interrelated
Yes.
individual?
Mm.
And if you always think of any project, it's like, okay, anything you're working on, whether it's your own school homework or something else, is always solo together.
Mm.
Can you
Mm.
imagine how
Mm.
different our lives would be in the way that we interact with one another?
Mm. Mm, yeah, and I'm sure other cultures do. Like again, Western world, part of us is
Sure.
is that great disconnection. But I'm sure there are communities and ways of being that's true. But and it's part of our Western journey. To get out of our logical, rational minds
Right.
to bring back that wholeness of our intuitive selves. Yeah,
Absolutely.
correct.
Absolutely. And to want it, like to recognize
Mm,
that it is something that is part of being a member of, society, is the fact that I am always interrelated and individual, or, always doing my own thing and still together, and realizing you're never alone. I think it
mm,
would really help to deal with some of the loneliness that we experience as individuals, because that loneliness, I mean, I was just reading that, what was it? I don't remember if it's in Japan or such. I mean, the loneliness levels are getting to be a big, big problem for many societies, that individuals feel completely and utterly alone. They don't have
mm,
those supportive networks, but more importantly, we don't even know how to create them anymore. And I think that
yeah.
programs and the stuff that we're talking about, the things that you do, for example, uh, in addition to the leadership benefits, but I mean, leaders oftentimes, traditional leaders, historic leaders, feel really lonely. Being a
Yeah,
leader is
yes.
extremely lonely in the
Yeah.
way that society has painted it, of, you're the direction seeker, you're the, the one that sets every these things. It's really a lonely world.
Yeah, yeah, I feel, I feel that I've heard that from, leaders, because yes, it's sort of this false sense of, like the echo chamber a little bit.
Mhm.
I reckon in terms of, I've got lots of ideas about loneliness because I'm a single woman. I've been single for a long time, and I came to, in fact, the land here in Pushpunyant in Mallorca was really healing for that because I came to a little pueblo. I don't speak Spanish, and still don't really. um, and it was like, if I'm going to be alone in my life, if I'm going to be this crone, like, and I'm an independent woman. Freedom is my incredible value to me, and but I'm going to go and test it out. I've got an opportunity. I don't know anybody, but I'm going to the land, and I'm going to sit with that low, what that means. And this is the thing, so believe in a solitude practice. In fact, I've just promoted a 24-hour solo together as sort of a counteraction to the chaos, because I think that actually to be in community, we need to be better at our own solitude, like to learn to discern those, those voices, or to step away from the drama and the distractions and the demands, and go inner to understand our own inner world, and listen to our own intuition and voice and knowing. I think that's, and so I absolutely believe in solitude. So I did like an 8-month experiment on the land, but it was, sitting with that oak, sitting with the moss, sitting just like, and I came absolutely to peace with that. Like because I think the natural world, I think loneliness, it's sort of, you can't be lonely if you
Right.
if you don't if you like the company you're in.
Right.
So, like liking ourselves and feeling that oneness. Like even now, you can breathe the air, like the natural world is there being supporting you, like plants, weeds will come up very close to you. They're there, like you're not alone,
Right.
and
Right.
or some people talk about, with the natural world being transpersonal resources. I don't kind of like that term. But it's sort of like, yeah, there are lots of friends out there, there's lots of wisdom out there, and if we can only tap into that, even if you're in an apartment in the middle of Tokyo in a little cubicle, there
Right.
is nature there, there is life there.
Right.
Mm.
I love that. And I love that I can see it both ways, because I could see it exactly the way you were just describing, in the fact of, you're never alone. There is all this. And I also feel like doing something of this way. I've also had, I live in community. So,
Mm.
like you said, those mirrors are always there. But the more you are in tune, and I love the idea of that, giving yourself space and time in nature. I had another client of mine who was doing that. She just very slowly, just complete full immersion. And I think when you're with people, if you do it from a place of, as you said, expansion, connection, being in myself, that peace, once that peace arrives,
Yeah.
nobody can take that peace away from
No.
you. I could be sitting in the middle of a carnival with people yelling, and I could find that peace. I remember the first time that I ever, was able to meditate in a crowded space. I was in the airport in was it Philadelphia? Yeah, I was in a Philadelphia airport. I was waiting for my flight. It was utter chaos. It was one of those days that was just like exponentially chaotic in the airport. Kids screaming, all kinds of sounds. And I remember sitting there and I just leaned back into my chair, comfortable kind of meditative position, closed my eyes, took some nice deep breaths, and ended up who knows where. And the only thing I heard was when they called my flight.
Wow.
Like I could hear through all of the chaos, everything quieted down, and I could hear them calling my flight. And I've been working on expanding that, kind of thinking about it from the perspective of nature, of when I go and I spend time in that sort of, notwithstanding birds and this and everything that's around me, being able to enter into that personal silence. And I've been testing that. How do I get myself there? How do I feel completely connected? I wasn't disconnected from what was happening in the airport. On the contrary, I was so connected that I didn't need to hear it. Other parts of me were registering the things that are necessary. And I do think that that is, the more we allow ourselves to embrace that natural side of ourselves and trust that our bodies know how to do things that we have forgotten as humans intellectually how to do, and allow our natural mirrors, the grass and all of the different beings that are around us, to kind of remind us, to help us get there, to be like, how do I learn, what it means to understand a vibration from, the ant? Or how do I understand how to recognize humidity from this type of plant? Or how do I find water like a moss? How do I connect into these elements that you have all continued to expand on and I have atrophied in order to really feel that completeness and that part of myself that's so much more than what I think it is today.
That's extraordinary. That's and that's a superpower, isn't it? And I think that, where I love the Thich Nhat Hanh, where, the Vietnamese, in terms of being a refugee, with there's so much chaos, how can I center myself? If one person just centers themselves and, and come into that rootedness of themselves, and that, like the ripple, literally, it changes the vibration. I mean, it's just quantum physics, isn't it? But, plants teach us that. They are the ultimate teacher of that.
Yeah, that rootedness is a perfect way of saying it. Once you remember that plants can't run away, like we as humans have atrophied all those things because we've run away.
Yeah.
Plant can't run away. So they've
Yeah.
had to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
They've had to learn how to adapt
Exactly.
exactly to the wind. Like, it's funny, both naturally our bodies, for those who aren't watching, we both naturally moved our bodies in that way because exactly those are the pieces that really tap into that. How do you share that with others today? Like, I know you do retreats. I know you have clients. I know you have multiple programs. How do you, because I know I struggle sometimes. Like, I think long terms. I've decided that, I love doing coaching and mentorship because I love that I can work over a long time scale. I love having the Naturally Conscious community, which is more of a membership model that has this long expansive, but I don't get the benefit of the, taking a person into a full immersion into a natural environment like you would with a retreat. I only get to do that every once in a while when people ask me to put together a retreat to Damanhur, which then I love doing it. So how do you how do you take people through these journeys?
Oh, lovely. I love your ecosystem, what you've created though. I mean, it's like abundant.
Yeah.
I even get a little bit overwhelmed, but it's just abundance. And, you're so living that, such a role model. Peace. For
Thank
me,
you.
yes. So I do work, with the corporate world. I have and so and my I very experientially. So anything that I do is experientially, and I've got an outdoor approach. So it's sort of like how I will. That's how I just work with them, and that's what they engage me for. I work with an Argonaut, which is a global conscious community, and this is in trust circles.
Hmm.
So they're online, and that's like every month working with them. And of course we always, when we come face to face, it is the human connection on the land,
Right.
just how that changes. I mean, intimacy, you can build intimacy, of course, incredible, we're so lucky on the virtual world, but there's nothing like being on the land together. And and nervous systems, we relax, we connect, we smell. It's a different experience. And so I love working with individuals here, or groups of people on the land in Mallorca. So, and I've like, I walk the land myself every day. I'm out there, so it feels I don't know, aligned. And so I love like either the outdoor coaching, like people, using nature as a metaphor. You've got a challenge and we go uphill, or we see,
Right.
or see paths in the forest, and we, and sort of like when they're in a dilemma or feeling depressed, find a depression, like just
Right.
that playfulness. Which plant is taking your attention, is inviting you into a conversation, and so they're helping people make meaning of them.
Hmm.
And so that sort of individual things. I have a thing called Solo Together, which it's like a micro rite of passage, a micro vision quest,
Nice.
where we invite people to disconnect from their day to day and spend just 2 hours in solitude, which is phenomenal for so many people. And it's like, what are you noticing? And then we go into then circle, and talk about that, and I mirror back the stories. That's been wonderful. So, and I have all nature connection walks or things like that. And then with the retreats, like I'm a coach, and I have this wonderful coaching program, which is if you want to coach in service of people and planet. There are so many online coaches. There's so many where anybody can call themselves a coach. I love that. Anybody can come from coaching, but I do like the rigor of study, and I do like what I have created, which is a nature based way of coaching. So we practice. How do we listen to a person if we cannot listen to a tree? Like, start there. Who are we in service of? Why do we coach? So many coaches, I've came from the background of coaching that a coach is neutral, but no, I've got opinions. We've got opinions. How about? And so I think it's important we share them. And like, people will come to me if they want that. And so I've got a 6-month journey, which is virtual with, group perspectives and supervision and one-to-one coaching, but it is centered around a 7-day retreat here in Mallorca. And, once again, coaching is not a theoretical exercise. If we're going to be in service of people and planet, we have to be with the land. We have to, go out to the land and be with it and co-create and learn that. We need to ask it questions. We need to listen. We need to, like, see vision with it. So I just love that experiential space. And I also think retreats, it's like, as coaches, learning our self-care practices. What are we doing to look after ourselves? Going back to the sustainability, how can we be regenerative? How can we be sustainable? And I think that retreats create that moment, don't they? You disconnect and you enter a liminal space of the unknown. So yeah, that's how I work with people. And of course, and I also do collaborations like with Moon 9, Gateway to Your Essence, which, we have a retreat based. People need to commit to that, to a different way. Otherwise, we just keep on doing the same thing, don't we? Of
Absolutely.
course, you've got a beautiful, you can turn around and have a micro moment and a connection. But I do believe in that bigger, longer, extended experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree that especially having different ways. We were just talking about that yesterday in my group, one of my group research groups here in Damanhur, one of my spiritual research groups, where we're working on a program for something, and we were saying that how important it is to have the consistency, in particular for the things that we're teaching as part of Meted Action, which is our initiatic path, and also having those moments of immersion. And it is important to have those moments where you just kind of give yourself that space to be completely 100% immersed in what you're doing. And I think that the downfall of the digital world is the fact that, and I'm guilty of this myself, it's like either you capture me
Yes.
or I am going to be doing something else, which is from a neurodivergent perspective can be very positive. Like not
Yes.
just it's helped me,
Mm.
for example, learn how to feel safer in a meeting, even in a physical
Mm.
meeting with people, to doodle or to do something that kind of helps my mind work in the way that it needs to work. The negative side of it is when we take it too far, which is that if the instructor or the person who's holding the meeting doesn't really capture my attention, I also don't give myself the permission or kind of give myself always the tools necessary to allow myself to be focused there. I'll just go, no, I'm going to go check my Facebook account, or I'm going to go
Mm.
do something like
Yeah.
that. And I think that retreats give you that space that says, this is a safe space,
Yes.
hopefully. And
Mm.
therefore, I'm just going to pretend that whatever is going here, I'm going to try it because
Yeah.
I'm safe. I'm in this place. It
Mm.
works for me. And I think that when you do, especially nature retreats, any retreat in a beautiful setting,
Mm.
helps you get into that faster.
Mm.
Allows you to try to just sort of say, I'm going to pretend the outside world doesn't exist. I'm going to think of this as my little kind of safe space, and I'm going to make mistakes and fall down and try
Yeah.
things I've never tried before, and expand in whatever way it
Mm.
goes, and we'll see what happens. So I love that
Mm.
you're doing that
Mm.
combination of stuff, especially
Yeah.
because, as you said, as coaches, we don't tell you do this, but we do
Mm.
want to be able to say, have you thought of that? And have you thought of that? And have you thought of that? And have you thought of that? And, how do we expand the way that you look things? And we do have experience,
Mm.
we've
Mm.
all have our years and years of experience. And that's the reason why a client chooses to come to us. A person will come and say, I want to work with you because I know you're going to expand me in that direction. And having that like care with somebody, I think is so important. I love that you're doing all these things. Plus,
Mm.
hey, it's Spain. I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
thoughts
you're
about
gonna have to. We have to co-create something.
exactly. We have to co-create. I've been saying that for the last year. Like there's a lot of signs that this is the year I'm
Yes.
heading back to Spain
Ah,
for a while,
yeah.
which I'm like,
I
yes,
like that.
that
Yes.
makes me happy. Penelope, this has been a
Yeah,
fantastic
thank
conversation. The
you.
time has just flown by.
Mm.
Are there any last words you want to tell everyone?
Oh, just immense gratitude. I think because you're helping, and I want you to say actually you're helping me because my journey is like this intimate, expansive relationship came from a rites of passage when a wilderness vision quest, and I had this intention. This little hummingbird came straight at me, and it was sort of like that's what I want. And so I've been expanding my sort of view of plants, like in terms of from the what is the from the co-creation, the possibilities, but actually you're offering like really like that intimacy, where you're like being with the uniqueness of that plant in your home, and that's a good learning for me,
Mhm.
because I think that um like start close in, right,
Right.
with the life that's here. And I think
Exactly.
that just, yeah, so actually you're expanding, you because the whole podcast is expanding, with perspectives. And I just love what you, yeah, like the voice of for the plants. So thank you.
Right. I am so happy, and like you said, it's about exchange, right?
Mm.
Where each one of us is doing our piece, and when we get to bring them together, we get to co-create
Yeah.
something even greater than the
Mm.
sum of its parts. So, thank you so much for being
Mm.
here. Thank you for sharing everything that
Thank
you're
you.
experiencing. I will, of course, put all the information about your website and the things you're doing into the show notes so that people will be able to find you and and that they can hopefully, maybe, who knows, come out to Mallorca, take a, one of
Yeah.
your retreats. I think that would
Yes.
be fantastic.
That
So
would
thank you
be.
so much.
Grazie. Yeah.
And we
Super.
will, I'm sure our paths are going to continue to cross, and keep up the amazing work. Like, please keep
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah,
It's so
same. Grazie,
important.
Tigria.
All right.
Ciao.
So,
Ciao.
wow, wasn't that such an enriching, expansive conversation? And I love that Penelope really touched on all the different facets of a coaching mentorship type of relationship, the different ways that we can be in service and working together. I mean, the fact is, not only are we always solo together from the perspective of I, as an individual, am a sovereign being, but I'm always in relationship with others, so I'm always together, but also in the way that we teach and learn and study and go deeper is also a personal experience that's happening with others. And I love that she has such great offerings that are very complementary even to the offerings that I have, right? The idea that the naturally conscious community is the place for you to bring all of what you're doing in and to experience it and share it and go deeper into it and have deep conversations and reflect in the meditations and to think about it through books. And we also put together retreats and such. So you can go and have beautiful experiences with somebody like Penelope and have this really deep way of connecting with land and the beings of the land with her, and then bring all of that into places like the naturally conscious community. And also, if you're looking for a long-term experience, if you really want to help transform your life and to accelerate that evolution, then coaching might be the right way for you. This is a place where you have that safe space, that one-on-one attention to really think about your life in new ways. How do I apply and co-create with myself and with others the life that I have been wanting and dreaming of? How do I accomplish my goals? How do I choose the projects I want to work on? How do I just learn how to be a better communicator with self, and so that my authentic, true nature can shine through, and really I don't have to hold back on anything that I am or anything that I want to accomplish? If you're interested in really moving into this phase of your life, then I am here for you. All you have to do is set up a discovery call. So all of that information is in the show notes. I am just like in awe of the brilliance of the people that are around me. And so I will always remind you over and over again to resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. That's it for now. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. To continue these conversations, join us in the Naturally Conscious Community, your premier online ecosystem for plant reawakening and accelerated evolution and co-creation with other kin. Here, you'll find expansive discussions, interactive courses, live events, and supportive group programs like the Plant Wisdom Book Club and the Sprouts Writing and Creativity Group. Connect with like-minded individuals collaborating with plants to integrate these insights into life. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. That's it for me, Tigria Gardenia, and my plant collaborators. Until next time, remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. I'm out. Bye.